Daniels.
Present.
Okay. Council Lady Toombs. Okay. Council Lady Van Reese, I
Present.
see you. Council Lady Welch.
Present.
Great. And Vice Chair Withers, I see you. Great. All right. I will motion pursuant to Governor Lee's executive order regarding electronic meetings as extended by Executive Orders 34 and 51. I make a motion that this committee constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Councilman Withers, would you like to second?
I would like to second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If anyone is against us meeting electronically, please raise your electronic hand now. Seeing none and hearing no one, we will continue. That motion passes. I wanted to just go ahead and make a note that I asked for us to meet on Monday because our last meeting went a little long with some topics and I didn't feel like we had enough time to fully discuss two bills that were before us. One is being deferred, Councilman Taylor's bill. And so what I'm going to be doing is having the council office see if we can just coordinate affordable housing and planning to meet on that bill together instead of having two separate conversations. I think that's one that maybe we could meet jointly and have one coherent, cohesive conversation together rather than separating that out. So we're going to start with our consent agenda. It has been updated since you received your agenda from me today, so hang with me on this one. So these, I'm going to call the item and legislative number out, and then I'll see if there's anything to bump, and I'll then read through it together. So starting with the consent, item number 2, RS 2020-450, number 4, substitute bill BL 2020-224. I'm sorry, item number 3 also, RS 2020-538. Number 5, BL 2024-27.
Madam Chair.
Item number 6, BL 2020-428 is on consent.
Madam Chair.
BL 2020-429. Yes.
Did you say?
Yes, Councilman McConnell.
Thank you. Did you say item 2020-224 is on consent?
It's on consent to defer one meeting.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
Reading the numbers now, and then if we need to bump anything, or if you have, before I read through all the bill, just testing it out to see if we can go faster. Item number 8, BL 2020-430. Number 9, BL 2020-431. Item number 10, BL 2020-432. Item number 11, BL 2020-433. Item number 12, BL 2020-434. Item number 13 is not on consent. Item 14 is not on consent. 15 not on consent. 16 not on consent. 17 BL 2020-371 by Stiles. Number 18 BL 2020-372. Item number 19 BL 2020-375. Item number 20 BL 2020-384. Item number 21 BL 2020-385. Item number 22 is not on consent. Item number 23, BL 2020-395. Item number 24, BL 2020-396. Item number 25, BL 2020-397 is on consent. Item number 26, 2020-398. Item number 27, BL 2020-399. And item 28 is on consent, BL 2020-400. Do any of those bills need to come off or have any questions about them? Please raise your hand or speak now.
Chair.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you.
Could we remove resolution 538 from consent, please?
What number is it?
Let me go back to my.
It's item 3, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else needs to come off consent or you have questions about? Okay. Seeing none and hearing none, I will proceed to read the captions of the consent agenda with your items. Starting with item number 2, RS 2020-450 Dreffel and others. Approves an intergovernmental agreement between the Department of Transportation, the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and the Department of Public Works for reimbursement of railroad crossing safety improvements on Post Road. The amendment and the resolution as amended is on consent. Item number 4, BL 2020, Substitute Bill 2020-224, Taylor, Hauser, and others. Amends the Metro Code to require landlords to provide notice to tenants prior to a sale of the property. That is on consent to defer one meeting. Just a second. So that takes us to item number 5, BL 2020-427, Roberts and others, abandons existing easement rights for 5 properties located at 4427 Michigan Avenue, formerly a portion of an unnumbered alley, on consent to be approved. Item number 6, BL 2020-428 by Toombs and others, accepts permanent and temporary easements for the 14th Avenue North Stormwater Improvement Project for 6 properties located on 14th Avenue North and Middle Street. That's on consent to be approved. BL 2020-429 Benedict and others, accepts permanent and temporary easements for the Pennington Avenue Stormwater Improvement Project for 8 properties located on Pennington Avenue and Burns Street, on consent to be approved. BL 2020-430 O'Connell and others, abandons existing water mains, fire hydrant assemblies, and easements to relocate existing water mains and to accept new water mains, fire hydrant assemblies, and easements for properties located at 1419 Roosevelt Parks Boulevard, on consent to be approved. Item number 9, BL 2020-431 Taylor and others, abandons existing public water mains and easements and to accept a public water main, fire hydrant easements for properties located at 640 21st Avenue North, on consent to be approved. Item number 10, BL 2020-432 Pulley, Murphy, and others, abandons existing water mains, fire hydrant assemblies, and easements, and to accept new water and sanitary sewer mains, fire hydrant assemblies, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for properties located at 1120 Glendale Lane. That's on consent to be approved. Moving on to the next page. Item number 11, BL 2020-433 Toombs and others, accepts public sanitary sewer mains and sanitary sewer manholes and easements for 6 properties located on Youngs Lane and West Trinity Lane, also known as New Cumberland Townhomes. That's on consent to be approved. Item number 12, BL 2020-434, Benedict and others, abandons existing sanitary sewer easement rights for property located at 4810 Gallatin Pike. That's on consent to be approved. Moving to bills on third reading. Item number 15, BL 2020-360 by Rutherford, changes 6.55 acres from CS to, I'm sorry, that's not on consent, so strike that one. Moving on to item number 17, BL 2020-370 by Styles, changes from AR2A to SP zoning for properties located at Mount View Road unnumbered and Crossings Boulevard unnumbered, and a portion of property located at Crossings Boulevard unnumbered to permit a mixed-use development. Item number 18 is Substitute Bill BL 2020-372, cancels a portion of a commercial plan unit development overlay district for properties located at Mount View Road unnumbered, Crossings Boulevard unnumbered, and a portion of property located at Crossings Boulevard unnumbered, approximately 200 feet east of Hickory Hollow Parkway. Item number 19 is BL 2023-75 by Toombs, changes 1.64 acres from RM2A-NS to SP zoning for properties located at 910 Youngs Lane and Youngs Name unnumbered at the southern terminus of Roy Street. Item number 20, BL 2020-384 by Parker, changes 0.29 acres from RS5 to R6A zoning for properties located at 710 Oneida Avenue. That's on consent to be approved. Item number 21, BL 2020-385 by Roden, applies a neighborhood landmark overlay district to 1.34 acres for property located at 3060 Lebanon Pike. That's on consent to be deferred 2 meetings. Item number 23, BL 2020-395 by O'Connell, applies a historic landmark overlay district for properties located at 2026 Avenue North, Site A, 0.08 acres, and for property located at 530 Church Street, Site B, 0.11 acres, at the northwest corner of 6th Avenue North and Church Street, and located within the Capitol Mall Redevelopment District overlay. That's on consent to be approved. Item number 24, BL 2020-396 by Roberts, changes 49.24 acres from R10 to RS10 zoning for various properties located along Cabot Drive, Beacon Lane, Upton Lane, South Upton Court, and North Upton Court. The substitute and the bill as substituted is on consent to be approved. Item number 25, BL 2020-397 by Rutherford, changes 3 acres from AR2A to RM15 located at 52 Blue Hole Road and Blue Hole Road unnumbered, approximately 545 feet from north of Bell Road. That's on consent to be approved. Item number 26, BL 2020-398 by O'Connell, changes 0.34 acres from CS to MULANS zoning for properties located at 1300 and 1304 Jefferson Street. That's on consent to be approved. Item number 27, BL 2020-399, amends a neighborhood landmark overlay district for 48.48 acres of property located at 611 and 609 Wedgwood Avenue to add a second story to an existing restaurant. That is on consent to be approved. And finally, our last one on consent is BL 2020-400 by Toombs, changes 0.34 acres 5 to RM15A-NS zoning for property located at 1527 Baptist World Center Drive on consent to be approved. Whew, that was a mouthful. Do we have, as I've read those, is there any other questions or anything else that needs to be bumped from there? Councilman Parker, is your hand an overachiever and just still up? Thank you. Okay. Great. I make a motion for the consent agenda to be approved as read. Councilman Withers.
Madam Chair, I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. If you would like to vote against the consent agenda as read, please raise your hand now or speak if you are unable to raise a hand. Seeing none and hearing none, are there any abstentions? Seeing none and hearing none, the consent agenda passes. Thank you. All right, so that takes us to item number 3, RS 2020-538, Parker, Toombs, Murphy, and Nash, approves an amendment to an amendment between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Department of Public Works for the acceptance of work in connection with the construction of a sidewalk along Dickerson Road from Douglas Avenue to Trinity Lane. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping to ask if anyone from Public Works could answer a couple questions about this. Do I need to move for approval for us to discuss it, or what do I need to do here?
Yes, the resolution is not properly before us until you have a motion and a second. So would you like to move its approval
Yes.
for the purposes of discussion? All right, I will second that. So now that it is properly before us, discussion, Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just was hoping that someone from Public Works would be on the line, could sort of explain. I see in the analysis that this is allowing us to utilize TDOT's on-call consultants in order to advance this project. So I just wanted to kind of get an understanding of, is that typical of sidewalk projects? Is that happening because this is a state route? And then additionally, this amendment extends the estimated completion time of the project to 2022, and I just wanted to get an idea if we're on track for that.
Councilman Parker, did you submit any of these questions to Public Works prior to the meeting today?
I did just prior to the meeting. Is Katrina Jones on the line? Is Katrina available?
I'm not seeing any. There we go. Yes, Ms. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you. As for the extension, this project has been delayed over its lifetime for a number of reasons. This being a TDOT project, we have to get their approval to move to the next phase of work. And the project got hung up between the NEPA process and the design approval process. So that took a little time, which threw the project off its original schedule. And that has contributed to us needing the additional time to get to construction. What was your second question?
Councilman Parker?
Thank you, Chair. So the analysis of this amendment agreement says that we're utilizing state law to be able to use TDOT's on-call consultants to accomplish some work. Is that, I guess I'm just not necessarily about this amendment, but just about the process generally. Is that something we do in a lot of sidewalk projects? Is that just kind of the easiest way to get things done these days? If someone could just explain a little bit about what that piece of it is.
Okay, so back in 2018, TDOT notified all of their recipients that on-call consultants were available for use. So these are consultants that have been procured by TDOT through the Brooks Act, and they have made them available for any project that is contracted through TDOT Local Programs Office. And this is not just for a sidewalk project. It can be for any size or any type of project that's under contract with them. And these consultants, they have 6 consultants. These consultants have a variety of skills. If we wanted to utilize those consultants, we would have to make the request to TDOT. They would send us the consultants' qualifications for review. We make the selection, send in the deposit. Well, they would give us a work order giving us an estimate of what the work would cost. We would then send in the deposit for that amount, and they would give the consultant to go ahead to begin to work with us. That process reduces our amount of time that we have to use to get a consultant. Normally, it would take maybe about 6 weeks to 2 months to get a consultant on board versus Metro's process, which could take anywhere from 4 months to 6 months sometimes to get things on board. It is an option. We don't always have to use that, but they are amending that into our contracts for us to be able to use them, should we choose.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Katrina Jones, for that explanation. Super informative and answered all my questions. So with that, I would renew my motion to approve.
That is a proper motion. Then I will second it. And so, is there any further discussion? Please raise your hand in the virtually. Ms. Jones, do you have any other comments? All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none and hearing none, if you would like to vote against this sidewalk project, RS 2020-538, please raise your hand now. Seeing none and hearing none, is any abstentions? Wonderful. Your resolution passes. Thank you, Councilman. That moves us on to bills on third reading. Number 13, substitute bill 2019-11 by Allen Sledge Swara, Cash, Young, and Toombs. It approves an amendment to the ground lease for Rose Park between the Department of Parks and Recreation and Belmont University, and approving a new ground lease between the Metro Board of Public Education and Belmont University for the construction and operation of an indoor batting and locker training facility. I will move for approval. Council Lady Allen, would you like to second that and have the floor?
Yes, ma'am. I would second that motion and offer a brief explanation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. So as you said, this bill removes an existing lease agreement provision that would allow a batting facility to be built on Metro Park's property at Rose Park, and then approves a new lease agreement with Metro Schools to allow that batting facility to be built on Metro Schools property in a corner of the Rose Park Middle School property that was partially parking lot, partially hillside, so not an area that was used for student recreation or playgrounds or anything like that. I would ask for the committee's approval. I am still continuing to work with neighborhood advocates and may possibly have an amendment that I'm working on right now, but it's not ready to offer to you, but I'm happy to explain some of the issues that we're still talking about. But just for the general context, in 2007, Belmont University approached Metro Parks and asked to build an athletic facility that included ball fields and soccer fields. It has been contentious. As the neighbors pointed out at the beginning that they were not involved in the process when it was first introduced, changes were made and there were conditions added to that first lease agreement that were for the benefit of the neighborhood, including payments to the schools and the community center and full four-year scholarships to students from that neighborhood, and reports on how those funds were used, and parking agreements and concession sharing. Some of those pieces have happened at exactly as they're supposed to. Some of those pieces have fallen through the cracks to some degree, and this process of talking about the school lease agreement has brought to light breakdowns in communication that are beginning to be healed, and I hope will continue to be healed. And also, as part of this process, we will be creating an advisory committee made up of neighborhood advocates as well as representatives from Metro Schools, Metro Parks, Belmont University, and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods that will meet quarterly to ensure that the conditions of both of these lease agreements are followed through as they are intended to be, and if anything is falling through the cracks, to catch it immediately as opposed to waiting for a year or two for somebody to notice that a report hasn't made it into the hands of everyone who's interested in that. So the amendments would deal with adding a little bit more structure to that committee meeting, to the terms of the committee, and just ensuring that their meetings are open and advertised, and that their conflict of interest statements signed, and that we are sure that that is a functioning and effective committee. So that hopefully will be ready by tomorrow, and if not, we will continue to work on that. So final other items that were put into this, again, to try to create as much benefit to the neighborhood as possible. A $35,000 lease payment to Metro Schools would be used specifically for the residents and students of the Edgehill neighborhood for after-school programming, and MNPS will have priority use this new batting facility that is spelled out specifically through an amendment that was added at the last meeting, as well as ensuring that language that was already in place about priority for the neighborhood for the parks lease is further spelled out even more clearly. So we have worked very hard. There have been a number of deferrals and a number of working group meetings and community meetings to try to identify all the concerns. We haven't gotten to absolutely everything, but many of the concerns that have been raised have been addressed, and I would hope that y'all would recognize the work that has gone into this and ask any questions you need to, and then move for approval.
Thank you, Council Lady Allen. And again, this is one of the bills that one of the reasons why I asked us to meet on Monday night, so we could all be part of the conversation. I do want to just reiterate what I believe I brought up last time is you will see that the Planning Commission did approve this, but at the Planning Commission, the task before the Planning Commission was to determine whether the land use was a civic use or not. So that is separate and a different decision than we typically have, where typically they are, is it appropriate? Should we pass it? Here we are passing and approving the actual amendment and the new ground lease. We are not determining or making the decision about the civic. That can go into your decision making, but I just wanted to again kind of reiterate that there's kind of two separate questions between what was before the Planning Commission and what is before us now. So we'll start with Councilman O'Connell. And then Council Lady Gamble. Councilman O'Connell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that for my constituents, one of the chief concerns about this overall proposal is the terms of the vis-a-vis the scenario with Metro Schools. So as an example, just this past weekend, I had a constituent contact me whose family went up to go use public land to basically just kick a soccer ball around. And they were escorted off the park's property by an armed Belmont security guard. And so I think in light of a scenario like that, it is still evident that we have not secured this public land for appropriate use by the public. And I guess I would ask the sponsor for clarification on summarizing any adjustments that are being made to the park lease itself that might rectify this scenario whereby private security is escorting members of the general public off of public land, and those members of private security are armed.
Thank you. I'm aware of that incident, and my understanding from the review of the report that I was sent was that that was the Belmont women's soccer team practicing at that time. They have made reservations on the Metro website, as any group can do, and there are many other groups, as you can see from the reports under athletics. If you go to Metro Parks and look under athletics to Rose Park, you can see how many other groups have actually used that space. This particular day, it did happen to be Belmont students who are having to spend a longer period of time practicing because they have to practice in smaller groups now. And so what might have previously been just a 7:30 to 9:30 practice now involves sanitizing things and breaking up into smaller groups. So it's now a 7:30 to 11:30 practice. And that is unfortunate, but is a temporary condition. As part of the original Rose Park lease, agreed to provide security for the area when they were there. And that particular person was present providing security. And my understanding is that he saw two people playing and explained to them that this particular field was reserved at that time and when it would be available again. And those two people left nicely. The softball field is often unoccupied and is another option for kicking a soccer ball. They then went to the family that you mentioned and made the same statement. And from what I understand, that was not well received because that particular person feels like this is public land and should always be available, although it is always available to reserve. And at that point, Belmont had reserved it for that period of time. He could also have gone to the softball field to kick a soccer ball. I do not know if they made that aware to him, and I think that that should be an option. I have talked to Belmont about the perception of having someone who is there to provide security, perhaps not being the best person to let people know that the field is reserved for athletic use. Maybe that would be a coach that would be a better person to make that statement. And certainly if it had been another team from another part of the community, they would not have had a security person there. So that's not something that happens under every scenario. But in this particular case, that was a person who was there as part of the agreement for Belmont's use, and he was the person to make that announcement. I do not, from what I have read, believe that the weapon was part of the discussion or that it was brandished in any way, and I'm sorry that that is something that puts people off, and I've pointed that out to Belmont as perhaps not the best perception. So that's an issue that they're looking into. But to get back to the original question of, is this public land available? It is exactly like Elmington Park across the street from my house is. It is a reservable field. There is a process for reserving that field, and when it's reserved, the people who have reserved it have the right to play on it, and when it's not reserved, anybody who wants to can wander up there. So I hope that answered your question.
So that comes pretty close, but I guess what I'm hearing is the proposal that you are making does not adjust the overall terms to better advantage the public with regard to Belmont in terms of rights to use the fields.
So the both the substitute bill as amended that's before us now, as well as the amendment that I'm working on, have language that reiterates what is in the park lease, which says that that the Metro Parks has priority for scheduling over Belmont, and that Metro Parks activities are top priority. I have further in the current bill that's before the council tonight, further expounds that Metro Parks has, in the duration of the lease thus far, included Edge Hill community activities, as well as certain schools that were already using the park for their athletic practices before Belmont put their complex up there in 2007. So it explicitly states that those two groups have been given priority, and it states that the condition of accepting this new lease agreement is that they continue to do that. And I'm working on further adding additional language to ensure that that's even more clear, because I know that's a very important point.
Thank you. I guess given the progress of, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the in-progress amendment, I'm more comfortable with a deferral. So I'd like to move to defer one meeting with a re-referral to planning.
Thank you, Councilman. That is a proper motion. If you don't mind, we still have some in the queue. If we can come back to your motion to see if there are any other issues that need to be addressed before it is deferred, I would like to do that. So, Councilman O'Connell, are you okay just tabling that until we get to Council Lady Gamble and Councilman Sledge?
Sure, that is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Lady Gamble, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to say, first of all, I'd like to commend the sponsor, Councilwoman Allen, for her work and due diligence in working with the community to address the concerns that have been expressed and to find a mutual agreement and compromise for this project. Also, I'd like to commend Belmont University for using its resources to partner with Metro Nashville Public Schools to provide this batting facility, athletic facility, that will be of community benefit to the residents in the Edge Hill community. Also, we heard from quite a few individuals at the last public hearing in support of this project and the value of this project to the youth in that community. So for those reasons, I am supporting this project today, and I am actually against a deferral of this project and re-referring it to planning. I guess I really don't understand the need for that at this point, with all of the work and due diligence that the sponsor has done in this and the express community support for the project. So I just wanted to, again, state my support for this bill as substituted with the pending amendment that the sponsor has mentioned today. And I would encourage that we move forward with an approval on this today.
Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know I'm not on the committee, so thank you for allowing me to speak. As many of you know, this proposed project is in District 17, and I want to give just another round of thanks to Councilmember Allen for the work that she's done on this. This is not been easy, just plain and simple, and to get to the agreement that it's at right now is a testament to her work and her work on council even before this. I do want to clarify just a couple of things, just as a reminder, and I think the chair spoke to this a little bit too regarding the land use. This facility is on the property of Rose Park Middle, which is why it went to an MPS. And I just want to, I know sometimes because we talk about Rose Park altogether, it can get a little bit confusing, but this facility itself is on Rose Park Middle's property, which of course is right next to, it's adjacent to ES Rose Park. Nothing about this facility impedes a single action that occurs at ES Rose Park. And nothing about this facility influences an action at ES Rose Park. And I will say I was also made aware of the incident over the weekend that was referred to. And I have several new soccer fields in the district I represent. Those too are reserved by private groups that can use them and then are open to the public's use otherwise. And what excites me about this proposal regarding this facility is that it has a type of basically interaction or reservation system that's going to be set up that I think could be a model system-wide, park system-wide, to help cut down on some of this confusion and help, quite frankly, everybody kind of get an idea of when parks facilities are able to be reserved and when they're just open play. And I will tell you, I am thankful in some ways that that incident occurred over at Rose Park where there was somebody who could intervene, because if that same individual had come to Fair Park where events are reserved for kids who are 8 to 12 years old, I would have been much more concerned. So I'm glad that we have the operations that we do over there. Can they be improved? Absolutely. And I actually think that this agreement is going to be a great way to create the pathway to improving it. So I would ask committee members respectfully to vote no on the deferral. Thank you.
Council Lady Toombs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to speak in support of the bill and against the deferral. Councilmember Allen has done a tremendous job in trying to address every single concern that has come from the community. As Councilmember Gamble stated at our last public hearing, we heard from several community members who represent the children who will most benefit from this from this athletic facility, the 582 children that live in Edge Hill Apartments. We heard from the president of the Edge Hill Residents Association. We heard from Shalama Ministries that works with the children in Edge Hill Apartments. We heard from prominent pastors who have been in that community for decades working with those children, and they all spoke in support of this project. I mean, I've looked at this agreement backwards and forwards, and I don't see what else Councilmember Allen can do to make it better. It seems that some community members are trying to address issues with the current ball fields by using by holding up this particular project, and I don't think that that's right, considering that the actual community that this athletic facility is designed to work with is in support of it. And again, let's not forget the children that live in the Edge Hill apartments in that community who have all spoken out in favor of the building of this facility. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Lady Toombs. Council Lady Allen, you mentioned that you have an amendment that you're working on and hoping to have tomorrow night that will obviously be late filed. Can you go over what are you working on? I know that some council members have spoken against the deferral because they think that everything has been worked out, but you've said that you're still working on an amendment, and this is an issue big enough, at least I feel that it is big enough that we need to make sure that we are looking at it in totality. I know you've worked for a very long time. I know Councilman Sledge before that has also worked a very long time on this. You've worked on it as a district council member and at large. And I'm just want to making one of the reasons we are holding this meeting tonight is so we can all have all the facts and have everything before us. And if you're still working on an amendment, I do think that is worthy of us as the planning committee to look at that and see that before we only have 24 hours before we're going to be voting on this finally. So if there's a late filed amendment, I think that might be worthy of deferring this depending on how big it is. Can you explain what all you are still working on? You are still muted, Council Lady.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to explain. I had a phone call from some of the neighborhood advocates over the weekend, and with some more suggestions. And I am doing everything I can to be responsive to as many of their issues as I can, and felt like some of these I thought would be able to be inserted, even on third reading as a late filed amendment. If it would make them more comfortable with what we're doing. So specifically, it would deal with the advisory group. I had called for the creation of an advisory group and who the members would be. They wanted to go ahead and define that it would be 3-year terms, that people could serve for 2 consecutive terms, that there would be a notice of who had been appointed, that they would sign a conflict of interest disclosure, and that the meetings would be publicly noticed and open to the public. And that is the advisory group information. I had assumed that it would be appropriate to simply do those kinds of procedures and process as part of the committee formation, but if the neighbors want to have it as part of the ordinance, I wanted to do that to make them more comfortable. They had some recitals that simply just give some context and history to insert, which I think it doesn't change anything, but it acknowledges the work that they've done to ensure that this park is for the benefit of the people, which I think is a. And finally, as I had mentioned in my response to Councilmember O'Connell, just to again reiterate the issue about prioritization of community groups in the scheduling of the park part, because the goal has been to use this school lease process to the key pieces of the park lease are also being followed as they should be. And I think there's been some question about scheduling, and part of that, again, so much of this is just breakdown in communication. So any additional language that I can add about prioritizing community use of the park, and we had a late filed amendment again that came up over the weekend before the council meeting to put that language in, and there were some further suggestions on how to further refine that language. So those are the 3 key pieces of the amendment. I'm working on some of the language for each of those 3 pieces and hope to have that finalized early tomorrow morning, but it is not ready to go tonight, and I apologize for that since I was only made aware of these ideas over the weekend.
Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick response to that. I think that's why I'm content to give one more meeting to get there. And I will just say, I mean, I know colleagues are speaking to community concerns having been alleviated, but as of this moment, I do not have District 19 constituents speaking in support of this in a portion of Edge Hill that is particularly proximate to where this further work on behalf of Belmont will take place, that are not in the employ of Belmont or more married to someone in the employ of Belmont. So as far as I'm concerned, constituents directly impacted by this park are not speaking as if their concerns have been addressed, and I continue to oppose it for that very reason. I think a one meeting deferral is perfectly appropriate. Thank you.
I will second your motion. Is there any discussion, further discussion on the motion to defer? Councilman Cash, are you on the motion to defer?
Well, I'm on the amendment.
Okay.
So
We do not have an amendment. There's not an amendment before us.
Right. She spoke.
Would you like to speak on the motion to defer?
You asked Councilmember Allen to speak on what she was thinking about for an amendment, and I have just a follow-up question about it.
Okay. Well,
if I'm out of order, that's fine.
At this point, we're on. We can come back to that if, depending on the vote on the motion. We're on discussion on the motion to defer at this time.
All right.
Council Lady Allen. Council Lady Allen, you're muted.
They're on. Okay, there you are. I would like to speak on the motion to defer. As I have said, there have been many legitimate concerns that the neighborhood group has brought forward, and I would like, as we determine whether or not to defer, to point out some of the items that have been addressed already. They had asked that the lease be shortened to 30 years, which was done, that the 3% escalator be added, which was done, that we remove any reference to specific groups getting any annual payment. We made that change. We made a statement that the annual payment would not be contingent on whether Metro Parks provided Saturday morning community at other parks. We made a statement that the annual payment would specifically benefit the Edge Hill community, and we made specific data requirements for the annual report and formed the Rose Park Committee at their suggestion. So I just think it's really important for people to understand, work our way through this, that we have not done absolutely everything the neighborhoods want, but we have done a whole lot, and I would just respectfully ask that people acknowledge the work that has been done, even as we continue to try to get the last pieces in. And I hope that, in a perfect world, I would love it if everyone would finally come back and say, this is now perfect. I'm not sure we'll ever get to that point, but I'm willing to do what it takes to make folks comfortable with it. But I would like to just ensure that people realize that that there has been a lot of movement on this. So thank you for that opportunity to say that.
Okay. Council Lady Welch on the motion to defer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I would like to speak in support of the motion to defer. I am very glad, and I very much appreciate the work that Councilmember Allen has done on this. I know that this is incredibly time consuming, and I appreciate her concern towards the concerns of the community and addressing them in the way that she has. But one of the concerns that I have is, though I know we say things theoretically about the prioritization of community groups and Metro Public Schools in terms of scheduling, I would like to see solid mechanisms in place that we have accountability for that, and that we can make sure that community groups and Metro are actually having prioritization in terms of scheduling. What is to stop Belmont from booking out for a year and actually eliminating the ability of community groups to actually get on the schedule. So I would like to see a very clear plan on how we do scheduling to assure that, in fact, Metro and community groups do have priority. And until I can see something that I feel like is enforceable, I have to support a motion to defer, because this is a very huge thing, and I appreciate the impact that it's going to have on the community, and I appreciate the voices of the community, and I want to support those voices because this is most immediate to their community. But as Councilmember O'Connell said, the other part of our community that is also impacted by this is not on board. And so I think we still have a little bit more work to do before we pass this. So I have to support the motion to defer. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Stiles on the motion to defer.
Madam Chair, I am not in support of the deferral. Again, to many of my other council members' points, Councilmember Allen has done a tremendous job of bridging the gap between the community and the school and Belmont. And I think the amendment that we're talking about is not going to be drastically different than what we have right now. And the individuals that seem to have concerns about this project are far fewer than those that are in support of this project across multiple areas in the community. So I would like to encourage my colleagues to please not support this deferral. Thank you so much.
Councilman Withers on the motion to defer.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm speaking against the motion to defer. What really impressed me so much during the public hearing was the impassioned pleas of so many community members, particularly those representing the residents of the Edge Hill apartments, the actual children and families who would use and benefit from this. And again, the faith community that spoke so strongly in favor of this plan. I know that not all sort of public housing communities are identical, certainly, but I know that in my experience with Envision Casey, that, you know, there are sometimes folks who are very well intentioned, but have kind of ideological or other objections to things and can sometimes overthink it and let that ideological perspective kind of get in the way of what the actual public housing, in particular residents, say that they want. That's who we need to listen to, and that's who I listen to. And what I heard from them is that they want this to move forward. And so I'm opposed to a deferral that is, if it's only on the basis of hashing out what appear to be very, very minor details. So I would oppose that deferral motion today. Thank you.
Council Lady Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am against the deferral, even though I'm not on the committee, but I have been a volunteer with Salama Ministries and in Edge Hill for many, many years, and even before I was a council member, and I see the positive impact that Belmont has made, and I know that there were some concerns regarding the first development of the baseball field, but from that, they were able to bring in Joy Searcy, who had worked in the community for many, many years and helped to bridge the gap between the school and the community. And I think it has been a great relationship. And I too cannot add any more to what my other colleagues have said, but I am asking my colleagues to vote against the deferral and let's move forward. It's been about 2 years that this project has been on the table, and I think we've got so many other things that we need to address that we can get this moving forward and move on to some other things that are of great priority.
Any other council members to speak on the motion to defer? I still have hands in the queue, but they've already spoken. So are these hands still up for Council Lady Welch? Is your hand still up to speak again, or is it just hanging on?
It's just hanging on. Sorry about that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Council Lady Stiles, are you just hanging on?
I'm just hanging on, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Council Lady Stiles, if you'll take your hand down. Okay, Councilman Cash, do you want to speak on the motion to defer, or do you want to take your hand down so we can vote?
I want to speak on the motion to defer quickly, if I may. It sounds like Council. Thank you. It sounds like Council Lady Allen has, in the existing legislation that we're voting on, already set up an advisory group to work through these problems, and it's just adding some details that the group, as I understood what she said, that the group could actually work out for itself. And I think it's kind of her to continue to listen to what neighbors have said and incorporate these suggestions. I think it can be worked out even without the amendment. I don't think her bill precludes those details about the advisory group. Last fall I started going to community meetings. We've had input on this for over a year, and it just seems like there's always something else that could be brought up. And so I think we should move forward with this, and we'll vote against the deferral.
All right, Councilman Cash, if you'll take your hand out. Council Lady Allen, before we go for a vote, I wanted to ask if for some reason your amendment is not ready tomorrow night, or doesn't go on or still needs more work, will you re-refer to this committee?
Yes, if we are still working on it, I will re-refer to this committee.
All right, thank you. With that, if you are against the motion to defer now, I'll give a second for those hands to go up and I will call them as I count them. All right, so we have Cash, Withers, Benedict, Rutherford, Toombs, Gamble, Allen, Hager, Van Rees, Stiles. That is 10 against the motion to defer, and that motion fails. We are on the substitute bill BL 2019-11. Councilman Rutherford, is your hand up to discuss the substitute bill, or is it hanging on?
Hang on,
All right.
sorry.
Any other further discussion on this bill before us? Okay, seeing none, Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would just say, again, I don't represent the area directly where Edge Hill Apartments is, but I know as an Aiken parent, my daughter is a classmate of several of those residents. I've gone over there to do and activities with the families over there. And I will just say two things. I think it's very difficult to get an honest impression of the entire resident population of families with children that would take advantage of it from the public hearing we had. I would also say I think it's a bit of a leap to say that other families adjacent to it who have children who use the park are also voices that we should not listen to, which is the implication. We really need to do the best of what is in the interest of the entire Edge Hill community. And I guess I would just remind colleagues that constituents who have the scars of the first round of discussions with Belmont are the very ones who still oppose this. And so I am here to represent their interests, and I will continue to not support this initiative until and unless those people like King Hollins, Ronnie Miller, the folks that are the elders of that Edge Hill community that have fought for its history and its interests are satisfied that this is a good deal for the folks that they continue to represent. So with that, I will speak to my opposition to the bill.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we take a vote? All right, seeing none. So we have a motion to approve. If you are against the motion to approve, please raise your hand now. Okay, we have Welch, O'Connell, Evans, Bradford, Parker, and Murphy. Any other votes? That is 6 against, and the motion to approve passes. If you'll take your hands down, we now are on BL 2020-364 by O'Connell. It changes 9.39 acres from IR to OG zoning for properties located at 309, 401, and 407 Driftwood Street, west of the terminus of Nestor Street. Councilman O'Connell for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move to defer this one meeting with a brief explanation.
I will second that, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. On this one, colleagues know that I do tend to work very closely with communities to make sure that we do not bring bills that run counter to policy. This one is a little bit interesting because, in fact, the community in this area off of Driftwood, where there is a lot of industrial and a small amount of mixed use starting to occur just basically on the edges of the policy area, there have been a number of community members interested in seeing an evolution of the community plan out there. In fact, we had a stalled effort to possibly reconsider the existing community plan and look at an amendment. And I've been working with planning on an appropriate priority for this exercise of considering this. Running this bill, which we've had sort of available to consider for since last term, honestly, is really, again, just trying to keep the conversation with the planning department moving ahead. And I'd like to have at least another couple of weeks to discuss this with them. So I would appreciate colleagues granting the space for that discussion and see if maybe there's a window to adjust the policy that starts to accommodate what I consider to be more appropriate uses for that area and what I think a lot of property owners would consider to be more appropriate uses for that area. So with that, I will renew my motion.
Thank you, Councilman. To clarify, that is a motion to defer one meeting?
Correct.
All right, thank you. And that I've seconded that, or I am seconding that. Do we have to watch the slides if it's a motion to defer, Ms. Zeitlin?
I don't think committees are required to, Madam Chair, but I'll
That's correct. You're not required to. This is John Cooper.
Okay, fabulous. That saves us even more time. All right, then we will, if you would like to vote against the motion to defer one meeting, please raise your hand now. Seeing none and hearing none, Councilman, your bill is deferred for one meeting. Thank you. Item number 15, BL 2023-68 by Rutherford changes 6.55 acres to CS to MULA zoning for property located at 622 Nolensville Pike. Councilman Rutherford, I will give you the floor. I think I kept this off consent because we had deferred it before. So Councilman Rutherford for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to move the bill for the purpose of moving a substitute that's there as well.
Thank you. I will second that. It's properly before us. Back for the substitute.
And the substitute basically just changes it to an SP. That's its primary purpose. So I move the substitute.
Wonderful. I will second that. We will take a vote on the substitute. If anyone would like to vote against the substitute, please raise your hand now or speak lively. Seeing none and hearing nothing, the substitute is approved. Councilman, on your bill as substituted.
Thank you, and I renew my motion on the bill.
Wonderful. That's seconded and properly before us. We'll take a vote. If there's no discussion, please raise your hand if you'd like to discuss. Seeing none and hearing none, if you'd like to vote against the bill as substituted, please raise your hand or speak now. Seeing none and hearing none, Councilman, your bill as substituted is approved by our committee, which takes us to item number 16, BL 2023-69 by Councilman Sledge. It approves with condition, disapproved, oh, sorry, wrong line. Changes 2.46 acres from IR, OR 20 and IWD to SP zoning for properties located at 622, 624, 626, 632, and 634 Moore Avenue and Moore Avenue unnumbered, and 625 Hamilton Avenue at the southeast corner of Hagen Street and Hamilton Avenue to permit a mixed-use development. Councilman Sledge, you are not on our account, or you're not on our committee, so I will move this. And Councilman Withers, would you like to second?
Chair, I would like to second that.
Thank you. I will move the amendment. Councilman Withers? Councilman Withers to second the amendment.
Second.
Thank you. Councilman Sledge, would you like to tell us anything about your project here?
Sure, Chair. Thanks, committee. So the amendment has an updated sketch that I'll probably later on very soon be bringing a mandatory referral or for an abandonment that you'll see. But what it does is something pretty exciting, and Arthur's pretty excited about it too. It takes asphalt up and puts down green space. There's a dead end on one side of this project, and instead of just leaving it as asphalt as a 45-foot wide road that nobody's going down, we're going to turn it into a 20-foot alley and reclaim the rest of the asphalt for green space. And it will be a pocket park that will be usable by the whole neighborhood. So with that, I'd request the committee's support on the amendment and the bill as amended.
Thank you. That is definitely the type of amendment and zoning that we like to see in our committee, and we appreciate you bringing it. And Arthur, great work by him. I'm sure this was a linchpin decision for him. So if you would like to vote against the amendment and against Arthur, please raise your hand now. Hearing none and seeing none, the amendment is approved. Now on the bill as amended, if you'd like to vote against the bill as amended, please raise your hand now. Hearing none and seeing none, Councilman, your bill is approved. And let's see, that takes us to item number 22, which is BL 2020-390, Mendez, Murphy, Henderson, and others, grants a franchise to Google Fiber Tennessee LLC to construct, operate, and maintain a fiber optic communication system within Metro Nashville under the provisions of Metro Code. I will move the I'll move the bill. Councilman Withers.
Would like to second that motion.
Thank you. We are open for discussion. Does anyone have any questions on this the bill before us? All right. Well, I deferred this last time because there were a few questions and there had been lively discussion in other committees, but seeing none today, I will renew the motion for approval. If you'd like to vote against this motion, please raise your hand or speak now. Hearing none and seeing none, BL 2020-390 is passed out of our committee. And I believe that has taken us to the end of our agenda. I will say look for an email in the next 2 weeks. In late October or in September, I am putting together a little zoning orientation, reorientation, and further information for us. And we'll have some guest speakers doing it video or some sort of combination. So if you have any questions about zoning, in particular, whether it be on something that goes before the BZA or before the planning and zoning, if it's state law or local or something like that, or just something that you're confused about or need more information on, please go ahead and email me with those. That way I can compile that and make sure that I have appropriate speakers. I'm planning on just having speakers for about 5 to 8 minutes to just briefly touch on things, and that way we could have some questions and discussion and then follow-up discussion if needed. But want to have your input on what topics are important to y'all that you would either like more discussion on or would like more information on. So if you'll just email me those soon to make sure that they line up with kind of what I'm planning, that would be great. Also, I will be forwarding you a link to the Ragnar to River, River to Ragnar presentation that the League of Women Voters had last Friday, because they're another group that I will have either present to us at that time or separately, but that way you can see that ahead of time. So with that, thank you all and see you tomorrow night.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.